I'm an overachiever, overperformer, and I now understand why,
Yeah.
because I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be accepted by my family. And there was a lot of conditional love. And this excelling academically was my ticket to get love and encouragement. My siblings had other experiences which I cannot talk about, but their paths wound up being rather different. But I'm here to talk about myself
Yeah.
and my journey.
It's like very, very, very chill, very chill. But here, I'll start you off with like a tough first question. Okay, a super tough first question.
Great.
Apple or Microsoft? Which one are we choosing here?
Apple.
Apple? Why is that?
Because it's easier.
That's true. I was actually like a huge like PC guy before until I actually started using like a MacBook, and I'm not gonna lie, just sort of being in this ecosystem, it's beautiful. It's seamless, and like I like was it Dostoevsky or which one was it? One of those philosophers was talking
Oh,
about how much.
probably Dostoevsky.
There you go.
A
There you go.
fellow, a fellow, I think it was a Ruski.
Yeah?
I think he's Russian. I think it's SKY, probably Russian or Ukrainian or something.
Are you Russian?
Polish.
You're Polish. Okay.
I'm a good Polish boy. I think.
Yeah.
But one of my professors used to tell me one can never be absolutely sure of one's parentage, and until Ancestry.com came on, and 23andMe, now one can be.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, no, that's an interesting veer because so okay, I know I'm not. I know you have like obviously you have medical experience, right? So the question I wanted to ask is like, wasn't there some weird stipulation with 23andMe where they were able to actually take like your DNA and then sort of like graph out like potential pathologies or something that you may have as well too? Was that like was there like a story around that at all or?
Probably. And you know what, Odie? I claim blissful ignorance. Yeah, I can't comment on stuff that I don't
No. Okay, that's
know.
fair. Yeah, but tell me more about your medical history though.
Okay, my professional career.
Yes, please, if you will.
Okay, well, I will tell you, Odie. Becoming a doctor,
Yeah.
believe it or not, I mean, and this is the kind of stuff that you cannot make up. Okay, my family of origin basically plus direction from God. But the chaos and the confusion and all the rest of it that I grew up at, coupled with direction from God, coupled with I happen to have at least a modicum of intelligence, led me to want to become a doctor. Now, the kind of doctor that I wanted to become was not the doctor that I became. I
Yeah.
wanted to become a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
of all things. And back when I was a teenager and I decided that, I had no idea why. I just knew that's what I wanted to do
Is it?
until I got into medical school and until I rotated through the psychiatry elective. I think it was in the third year of medical school. And I was doing okay on the rotation. I was saying, this is going to be my thing. Until one day, this very, very ill patient, I mean, ill mentally and probably physically as well. I was assigned to a locked ward as a medical student, along with a couple other students, and we were being trained by the attendings. One weekend, a patient was so depressed that he actually successfully committed suicide while on the locked ward. And Odie, I swear to you,
Yeah.
a switch went off
Yeah.
in my mind, and I was crestfallen. I realized I could not. It wasn't right. for me to become a psychiatrist. And it took me some years to find out the why behind that, which I eventually did in my own therapy. And then, and I will fast forward to now and share with you the reason why. I was
Yeah, yeah.
going to try to heal my family. That was my heart's desire. And through my own individual therapy, for which I have a long track record of being in therapy, which I highly endorse for people who have gone through terrible stuff to help unlearn and unwind and decouple oneself from, from the identity that you assumed, as you were living in the family from which you came.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Let me was it a challenge for you to first go into therapy?
I was going down. I was headed using alcohol to numb, and uh, I could tell just in my heart that I was headed downward,
Yeah, yeah.
and something inside me said, "Greg, things ain't right." And so even in medical school, I actually did a short segment of my own therapy with one of the psychiatrists who was at the medical school that Lynn and I went to. Uh, but the more I got into self discovery, the more I began to like myself and realize, okay, I mean, look, I'm a very complicated individual. I'm an overachiever, overperformer. And I now understand why, because
Yeah.
I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be accepted by my family. And there was a lot of conditional love, and this excelling academically was my ticket to get love and encouragement. Um, my siblings had other experiences which I cannot talk about, but their paths wound up being rather different. Um, but I'm here to talk about myself and
Yeah.
and my journey.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, as it turns out, I rotated through all the different areas of medicine, pediatrics, surgery, um, psychiatry, and one or two other things. Uh-oh, excuse me. I
Okay.
am so
It's like I love
sorry.
the ringtone though.
Yeah, this was no bueno. Uh, do not disturb, thank you. And anyway, I realized that one by one, the usual specialties for which people went into were not for me. I just didn't feel suited until one day I discovered diagnostic radiology. And I thank God for the dynamic professor who was actually chairman of the Department of Radiology at our medical school. I fell in love with radiology. I mean, I know it sounds weird to love something inanimate, but I just realized, hey, this guy here, I loved anatomy, loved pathology, and radiology is, it's kind of like being a dynamic pathologist. We, along with pathology, are some of the pillars of medical care. A lot of doctors rely on us for correct and accurate diagnoses, like for things such as, like, does the patient have pneumonia? Is there a fracture? Is there a blood clot? Is there cancer? If there is cancer, where is it? So I was in essence a detective, which I loved the chase, and arriving at the correct diagnosis was my signature. And without trying to sound braggadocious,
Yeah.
I was damn good at it. And I was one of the, I would say one of the top radiologists. So I found what suited me.
Yeah.
And I found out later in life that my desire to have become a psychiatrist was I really desperately wanted to heal my family, and I realized I couldn't.
Let me ask you this question because what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Because essentially, you're explaining the fact that, which is an interesting fact, and a message I'd like to share with a lot of people that, despite a history of trauma or like let's say a more colorful history in your family's past in your upbringing, you were able to become a high performer, right? And to actually execute on the things that you wanted to strategize on, right? But part of that was because you had this need for internal validation, and you sought it through external validation, through areas and fields that you're actually able to be like highly efficacious in, and be congratulated for doing like a good job. Like, does that make any sense or no?
Very much. I love, even if I didn't get a uh, like a attaboy from one of the referring doctors, I knew in my heart. I mean, I'm a little bit embarrassed to say this, but I really love being right. But I'll only want to be right when I know what I know.
Yeah.
And I strive not to BS people with fake knowledge. And and so
That makes a lot of sense. It's because essentially you're saying like I know my worth in terms of like the amount of effort I put into my work ethic, my practice, my art, whatever. So when I'm coming to this conclusion, it's not a matter of me saying that like I have some sort of like intellectual like superiority or supremacy over you. It's saying no, 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 no. You don't understand how much work I put into these things, right? It's like, I know I'm right. Like I've taken the time. If anything, please prove me wrong. I would like to hear, like, so I can
yeah,
improve this, right? Like,
Odie, it reminds me of what I would say. Like, say a surgeon. There have been times where another radiologist would give a formal interpretation on a study, like say a CAT scan of the abdomen and pelvis, and the conclusion or the impression that the radiologist reached wasn't uh, concordant with what the surgeon believed was really going on with the patient. So every once in a while, a surgeon would come down to my office and ask to review a study and ask me stone cold, the study that had already been interpreted. It'd say, "Hey, Greg, what do you think about this?" And I would look at it stone cold without any knowledge. And then I'd ask him what the clinical information was. And if it was available, I would look at the report that the radiologist had generated. And there were times when I had a different opinion. And so every once in a while, the surgeon would say, well, what do I do? I said, well, if you want, go ask somebody else. I said, this is my opinion.
yeah,
I
this is what
said,
I have.
seek another opinion. But this is the way I interpret it. And so it's like, this is where I'm coming from, man.
Yeah, yeah, this is what I know.
Take
So,
it or
so,
not.
so let me ask you this question then. Like, so in your ability to achieve that external validation, right? Even when it's not in the scenario where people always agree with you, but just more so in the fact that you're competent in this space, right? Like, did you feel internally validated? Like, were you able to get that, like, feed that initial, like, yeah,
Yes, I was able to love myself
yeah,
and care for myself enough to realize, okay, you do your best, and that is enough. It has to be enough. It yeah, and that's a tough situation because way back when, in my family of origin, sometimes my best wasn't good enough.
Mm.
Um, you
So you
know,
had
and
to learn that.
what's that?
You had to learn that, like, you had to learn that level of, like, self that's what I'm looking for, just like
It's like self-soothing or
yeah,
self-validation,
yeah,
and for me, hard work, effort, dedication, stick-to-itness, all played a factor, and there were times when I was puzzled by what was going on in a particular individual, in a particular case, call it what you will, or a particular study, and if I did not feel comfortable, I would ask for other opinions. My threshold was not very high. I did not believe I believed I knew what I knew.
yeah,
But I will tell you, I've been humbled plenty of times, and there are others who have tremendous skills, which I found it really important to rely on as sort of a team effort, and that's how I rolled.
yeah,
I retired from radiology at age 60, 11 years ago. Had gotten to the place where I was at the top of my game, and it's almost like a professional sports player. I left before I fell off the bell-shaped curve.
yeah,
And there were a variety of reasons for me leaving, which frankly, rather not go into, but I left vertical instead of horizontal, and I have had the last 11 years has been amazing. I
yeah.
absolutely love to have that special entity called time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. And you've been doing a lot of great things with that free time. Like one of which is obviously your book, which you're talking a lot about like your past and like, some of the content that made you the man that you are today, right? I'd love to hear more about that as well, because obviously you've had like a very unique experience in your upbringing, and you've still been able to be very successful. And I think that's a very important message, right? Just due to the fact that you don't you don't have to be like and I hope this doesn't come off in a correct way. You don't have to be perfect to like end up doing things in your life, right? Like you can achieve despite like going through attrition. And that's one thing I really like about your message.
Thank you. And I'll just share with you a few things that I have been blessed to be able to do in retirement. And well, I will have to tell you, probably the main reason behind me choosing to write my story was my family of origin, which did have a factor because I believe I'm in the minority of people who have experienced some of the trauma that I went through as a child, um, and then also been on the medical journey, which is a whole nother significant story, which, by the way, is not the highlight of my life. The highlight is really having had my family and being blessed with the three children that God allowed us to have. I'm very proud of my daughter, who she and her husband have four little angels, and they are amazing parents. I am most proud of Lynn and my wife and I have been married through a lot of stuff. We have been through I wanna say most things that couples can live through. We've been
Yeah,
married 41 years.
that's awesome.
I have 2 chapters in my book devoted to our son named David, who lived from 1993 until 2002. David, initially, we thought was healthy. A few months into his life, he lived from 1993 until 2002. A few months into his life, we slowly began to realize that he wasn't making eye contact. And we, one day, and when he was about 3.5 months old, we brought him in urgently for a well baby check and watched the pediatrician's facial expression change to one of grave concern. And he basically told us, Your son is developmentally delayed." I had no idea what that meant, but I was to find out.
Yeah. What
At
does
at
yeah,
any rate, a couple of months later, at about 5 months of age, he began to have seizures and all sorts of issues, including, feeding issues. He had bad reflux, uh, but the seizures were horrific. He had what's called infantile spasms, tonic-clonic type seizures. And for those folks out there who have children or members of their family who are going through really tough times, like having some type of disability, uh, cancer, or chronic medical illness, I can tell you, I am a kindred spirit to you because I've been there, done that, and also learned what helped us in the process, which is one reason why I wrote my book. We were blessed with going to a church, a Christian church that was very small. Actually, it was the downtown church in Fresno, where there were where the pastor took all comers, including black, Hispanic, white, down and outers, and up and outers like us, who were struggling. And but we also found support in other groups, such as a Christian disability ministry called Johnny and Friends, Joni and
yeah,
Friends.
yeah,
They came alongside us, and we did, over the course of David's life, we did 2 family retreats with them, and were nourished, supported, but also we realized we are not alone. There's a whole community out there of folks who are going through it. And so after David passed, he died at the age of almost 10 years old in 2002. About a year or two after David died, I felt led to honor his memory by participating with Johnny and Friends as a member of the local board of directors in Fresno. And it was very joyful for me to give back. And that's what the signature message for my last 11 years has been. What, like M. Scott Peck would, I think he wrote, what kind of return will I make?
yeah,
Listen, Odie, at age 71, what kind of legacy do I want to leave? And so the answer is, to me, a legacy of love. You interjecting my humor, showcase kindness, and in so doing, I mean, I think the greatest commandment that God ever said was love love yourself, love your neighbor as yourself. And I'm really striving to do that, without trying to coerce people or say, "Oh, unless you're born again and you're born again Christian, you're going to hell." I believe God is a bigger God than that, and I the God I serve is a God of love, and so I am striving to be that person who, in my life, through my actions and words, bring honor and glory to God. I would also like to share with you that uh, our son Sammy, whose name I am allowed to mention, that is our third child, our third living child. Sammy is an amazing entertainer down in the LA area. He went to UCLA School of Theater, Film, and Television, majored in musical theater, extremely talented. And as we found out about 13 years ago, Sammy basically was gay and is gay. That also has been a real journey for our family. And without going into detail, I could share, and I'd love to share my journey, because initially my dreams, my fantasies, they belonged to me,
Mhm.
were, oh, Sammy's going to find a beautiful young woman, get married, have children, and more grandchildren, the better, because my wife and I are madly in love with our grandchildren. That dream dissolved. And I had to contend with, whose life is it anyway? Do I own my children? And of course, the answer is no.
Mm.
I was privileged to be, and still am privileged to be, their dad.
Yeah.
And let me just do a shout out out there to the moms and dads who are consistently doing their best to love and nourish their children. I can't tell you how highly I respect you, because it breaks my heart to see people abusing their children. I know too much. My wife, Lynn, is a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
I
so
have
you ended
heard
it ended up
some.
going back to the well anyhow, back to psychiatry. That's funny.
Right, right, right. I mean, it's fascinating how God put us together, and it's even more interesting how God keeps us together, because there have been no small number of times where either one or the other said, in fact, a handful of months ago, my wife said, Greg, I think you need to find yourself another partner. And and she was particularly down that day. And I
Yeah.
just let it sit for a few minutes. I didn't respond. I didn't have anger, but it finally dawned on me. I said to her, I said, Lynn, nobody else would put up with me.
Yeah,
I'm with you for the long haul.
yeah.
You can't get rid of me.
Yeah, yeah,
And Odie, look, I'm a really good person. Am I hard to live with? Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, I'm no I'm no major prize, but what I am is, I am enjoying being the me that God created me to be. And so I'm living in that space right now. You might say this guy's nuts. And maybe I am.
No, I don't think so at all. Honestly, I think one of the most valuable things about this podcast is that it's a median for communication. And just by happenstance, I happen to know enough people where there's like there's weird intersectionalities. But like I think you have a lot of value to provide younger people. who don't know like the answers for these type of things, right? So like for example, when you talk about like your son, how like that, I think that's something that like I myself as a millennial, as I am having peers that are having children, these are questions that they're asking themselves. And if you don't really have like somebody to really reference that, what are you gonna do? So when you have a platform where somebody can speak towards their experience and truthfully and genuinely do so, I think it's massively valuable, right? And even what you're trying to say in terms of like being complex in relationships, I think that's another reality, right? Because I think the disservice that's sold to a lot of people is that hallmark, picturesque relationship where everything's perfect all the time. You know what I mean? Something with yourself. The really like my like the relationship the relationship that works the best for me are the ones where essentially we're actually like I don't want to say we're at conflict the most, but we're actually having genuine communication and determining essentially like what are we doing, what like, and who are we, right? And then I also want to bring back because you mentioned the fact that like, it may not be the easiest to date you, right? Or sorry, be married to. And I sort of understand that as well too, because I sort of feel like myself with my history of like colorful events that happened in my past, is definitely like changed my perspective. And sometimes in relationships that can bring up conflict, right? But one thing I appreciate about my partner is that she's genuinely like in this for like the long run, right? So it's like she's not one to like even because I've had a similar scenario where she's been she asks herself all the time, like, you're like, should we still be together? Blah, 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 right? But then basically the conversation of like why we are together, right? We are together because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And that's why it works, right? But it's almost like you need to continuously be having that conversation to make sure you guys are on the same page, right? And I can't, I'm not a relationship expert, so I don't know if that's the best solution per se, but all I can say is that I have empathy for you and I understand where you're coming from. And what you're saying is actually, it's massively valuable. It's massively valuable because I think communication is a lost art, unfortunately. And what you're saying is like you're seeing some gems, some true gems for people to actually like pick up on.
Odie, has your experience been, um, and I don't mean to put any kind of negative slant on some of the younger generations. I almost wonder if through the media, in many ways, we have been sold a bad deal about the notions of relationships, the notions of family, um, like the notions of romance. Um, I just will share with you. My observation is I believe many people quit early in the game in relationships and give up because the fireworks are no longer there, and they bought the lie that the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. I'm here to tell you, you still have to mow the grass.
Yeah.
And another thing that I've learned is love is sacrifice in many ways, and that I'm not the same person that I was back when I got married in 1983. Neither is my wife Lynn. And there are those experts out there who say, hold on to your hold on to your nylons because each of you changes about 10 times during a marriage.
Yeah.
So essentially you wind up marrying 10 different people in one.
Exactly. Okay, so yeah, if you want me, I would. Okay, yeah, I totally agree with you. And like, it's not a negative slant. I will say perfectly openly, like this generation does not know how to date. They don't know. I was just having this conversation with like my hairstylist. She was, this generation doesn't know how to court. They don't know how to date. And like, yes, I think it's for a myriad of reasons, right? But for sure, like the stick to itiveness does not exist in relationship, right? Because I feel like I feel like there is this sort of advertisement of a relationship where things are perfect 100% of the time. And that's not a mature elaboration of what actually a relationship is. One thing that I'm always grateful for is that I was in a very long-term relationship at an early point in my life in which I lived with this person and we worked together, not together, but like we had to figure things out, right? And also very uniquely to your scenario, similarly, she had a chronic health issue. herself. So there was actually like a lot of correlation in terms of like we had to grow up together because she was very important to me. I was very important to her, right? And in that, I learned a lot of things about like, and I wasn't perfect, obviously, because I was young, right? But in that, there was a lot of things that I learned. And a lot of them was that like you're not. This is not always going to be uh hyper romantic relationship. At the end of the day, what it comes down to, this is a partnership. This is your life partner, right? And you guys are growing up together. You're moving through life together, right? And there's a whole bunch of stipulations to that itself. Because you are growing up together, that also means you're not growing up by yourself, right? And you need to understand that that's an opportunity cost, right? Because you can mature by yourself, sure. But the reason why you're not is because you see the value proposition in growing up with this person, right? But you sort of need to understand the intent of being in that, right? And I just think like long-term intent is something that doesn't exist in our generation. We're just more so about short-term benefit. Maybe the technology, right? But like it's like you get into a relationship with somebody, you're really into them, the honeymoon phase sort of dies down. Now someone new pops up out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Now you're interested in them. And because you lack the ability to actually stay in that relationship, and it's not necessarily your specific problem. I think it's the norms of society. I think it's like the rhetoric that's being sold right now. You don't value the long-term nature of that relationship. So you go hop onto a new one, right? And that happens over and over again. You ask yourself the question, why can't I have a successful relationship? Is it me? And in reality, it probably is, right? But it's not really.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, right. But you know what's funny? I feel like the other unfortunate part is that no that introspective question never actually comes up because we also live in a hyper divisive culture in which the "is it me" question never comes up. The question, the thing that's sold to you is like, no, it's the other side, right? So I feel like, especially with our generation, one of the biggest problems, the millennials and Gen Zs and after, is this whole gender wars thing, right? Which is ironic because, again, because I was in a relationship early in my life, one thing I understand is I do better with a woman. I think we as species are designed to. I don't want to like for me. I do better when a woman is in my life, and I think that there's certain aspects of like that they have strengths that complement my weaknesses, and vice versa, right? And I think like as people, we need each other, and the more this rhetoric is so that we don't, and to sort of focus on hyper individuality, it leads into these downstream effects of relationships being poor, and then therefore like maybe just in general people communicate less and courting is gone, right? So yeah, no, like I don't think you're saying anything wrong in saying that we suck at dating. You're right, we're terrible. Like
Yeah.
that's not yeah.
And
Yeah.
I will tell you, I made a covenant, and in the Old Testament, they had covenants in blood. I took my covenant seriously. I am very proud of my wife, Lynn, who is just a little bit younger than me. She is still participating in her profession as a psychiatrist, uh, part-time, and she happens to work with the veteran population, for which I have to tell you, I have so much respect for, um, knowing some of the inside information of what really happens, and believe me, nobody's got it easy. But I will tell you, I know of people who have been married 3, 4 times. I mean, there are people who have children out of wedlock, which I understand there's all sorts of reasons for that. I happen to believe that I I do my best to be a man of my word and follow through on that which I say I'm going to do. The next step is to be out on the playing field and doing that which you said. Life ain't easy. I mean, I'm at a stage of life right now where I just had my right knee replaced a little over a month ago. Right as we speak, the audience can't see it, but I'm icing my knee because they're expecting some rain tomorrow, and it's talking to me a little bit.
S
Um, "Oh, boo-hoo." And my wife has been through a little bit more, well, modest amount more on her medical journey than me. My role is I am with her, and I told her this without trying to sound morbid. I am there till either God calls me home
Mm,
or God calls her home.
mm,
And my commitment is to be progressively more loving, unconditionally, and also to honor my journey and honor her journey, but realize that our journeys, while there are parallels along the way, there's also an individual, large individual component. And I have to say, I am thoroughly enjoying being a podcast guest, and you're probably my ninth or 10th podcast host. As you can tell, I love to talk. This is an amazing outlet for me. More importantly, I have a voice. And no, I'm not going to get into the political ring and try to stir up some discord and divisiveness. Well, if you're on the extreme right, you're wrong, or the extreme left, uh, you're wrong. I mean, hateful speech, hateful actions have no place for me. And so I'm almost becoming a little bit apolitical because, Odie, I don't even know what's true.
yeah,
I really do not.
yeah,
And I have beliefs. Sure. Do I have a certain side that I fall on? Yeah. Do what? And going back to like having bulletproof knowledge, or as close to bulletproof certainty about something. I mean, when I diagnosed appendicitis or something along those lines, I had circa 100% certainty, or 99.9, which was plenty good for the surgeon. And turns out I was right majority of the time. N-
yeah.
Not every time. And so I don't know. These are colorful times, but
They are
I'm
color.
really great. I'm grateful to have a voice, and I thank you for giving me a voice.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that, right? And I think at the end of the day, your willingness to actually speak is the most important part, because part of the nature of this podcast and part of like where I'm at too as well is that yeah, it is hard to tell the truth of things right now on a lot of levels. And I think like the way historically humans determine the truth is via communication. Unfortunately, we're all getting bucketed into these areas where we're not communicating with each other, right? So what I find is useful about this podcast is that like I don't take a side. I am trying to talk to as many people as I can. There is a huge like amongst my friend group, there's a huge irony in a lot of the conversations that I'm having, right? Like for me to be the relationship guy, podcast guy is for some people hilarious, right? But I think like yeah, yeah. But I think it's important. It's important to platform these conversations and have honest conversations where you're actually trying to speak to somebody and not trying to like purport or sell your truth or sell your position to somebody else. You're just talking. You know what I mean? I think those are important, right? Um, and I think like interestingly enough, so like my background is in sales and marketing, right? And I think like, and even prior to that, like I'm an econ nerd. So like, there's this thing, there's a concept of value versus price, right? So people have an understanding of price, right? But they don't understand that like value is intrinsic, right? So like the value of something may not be the same to you as it is somebody else, but the price will be. Right. And I think that's also very like true when you speak to things in recent event price value. If you move to a more modern explanation, for me, the new price to value is scale versus impact, right? So from a social media perspective, right, or from like the digital whatever, like the tech world, right? people always thought scale is important. The most followers, the most like views, the most likes, blah blah. In reality, what I've realized is that scale is not important. Impact is important. How many of those people that are actually listening to those message can you actually, you know, not get to do an actual item, but how does it impact them or influence them in any? And I think that's more important, right? And yeah, so I think these conversations are great because they actually provide more impact, and we do that by actually having an honest conversation where we're not trying to rile people up. We're not trying to actually like achieve some sort of goal that's more so beneficial to us. It is just at the end of the day like a conversation. But it's unfortunate more of those aren't happening.
Yeah, and I may I take this opportunity for a shameless promotion commercial.
100%. Yeah.
This is my book entitled Dare to Thrive. Uh, Lessons learned from a trauma survivor. It's my true story. I hope that I impact one person in your audience. It's not about selling this book because my story in many ways is your story and the story of many people who are in your audience. Do I need extra money? Not really. We're both physicians. We're in a pretty high income bracket. It's more about bringing honor and glory to God in my last and best quarter. I have a few things that has worked for me. They may or may not work for you. But one thing that I will say to particularly to the youngsters out there who are struggling, so important to reach out for support, be it a trusted mentor or two. Like for me, one of my professors in college, he helped me realize, yeah, I had what it took to become a doctor because I was struggling. Hey, what is this? Am I going to go work for the railroad like everybody in my family, which is a very honorable choice as well? Um, or am I going to be doing something dramatically different? Well, I learned to believe in myself. Sometimes a teacher, professor, trusted family member, relative, people from church, support groups. Uh, at least these days, being in one's own therapy or being in a support group is encouraged. It's not frowned upon anymore. And I'm a big proponent of, hey, if you're struggling, reach out. Don't try to do life alone.
That's perfect. I think that's a really great message. I think that's important. You know, honestly, I think we should end on that. I think that's great. So Greg, where can people get your book?
Variety of places. Amazon, Barnes and Noble particularly, and the list goes on from there. By the way, if anybody does read it, I would greatly appreciate a review on Amazon if you resonate with what's in it.
You want to show the book again one more time? What is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Dare to Thrive, Greg Linkowski on Amazon. Send a review. Is there any platform people should get in contact with you at all? Or
Yeah. Now, the good question is, where did I put that? Oh, God. No, let me see here. Do I have it here? Oh yeah. Okay. So, hang on one second. I'm kind of a mad professor. How is this? This is
that's
really
perfect.
high
That's
tech.
perfect. Okay, the Greg Linkowski. That's underscore MD, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. And then Linkowski, Greg at gmail.com. Okay, perfect. I'll make sure that's included. But it's been a great conversation today, Greg. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Odie, like it or not, you got the real me, and I'm enjoying. I have enjoyed this, and I really want to thank you. God bless you, and you're doing good work. That's my gut feeling.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.